Hello everyone. This video is presented to you by Roxanne Garcia, Batul Jakir, and Kieran Deep Dillon. The purpose of this video is to explore the great thinker, Hermann Ebbinghaus, and how his contributions helped progress in science and psychology over time. Hermann Ebbinghaus was born on January 24, 1850, son of a merchant Karl Ebbinghaus, in the town of Barmen, Germany. He was brought up in the evangelical faith and received his preliminary education at the gymnasium of his native town. At the age of 17, he entered on university studies at Bonn in the year 1867 and later migrating to Halle in Berlin. His university work was interrupted by the Franco-Prussian War outbreak in 1870. He then joined the German army until the spring of 1871. Although his initial interests were history and philology, he returned to Bonn and continued his philosophical studies. He obtained his PhD in philosophy in 1873 with a dissertation, Hartmann's Philosophy of the Unconscious, a work discussed in severely critical fashion. His teachers of philosophy had been Erdmann, Schindellenberg, and J.B. Meyer. Ebbinghaus should indeed be counted among the pioneers of experimental psychology, though he belongs to that second generation which followed close on Helmholtz and Fechner, who apparently influenced him the most. During the years following his doctorate, Wundt published his first edition of physiological psychology. He then established his first psychological laboratory in Leipzig, bringing together the various lines of work which contributed to the establishment of empirical psychology. He became private docent of philosophy in the University of Berlin and appointed extraordinary professor of philosophy. He had devised a method by which a quantitative experiment could be extended beyond the sphere of sense impressions and reaction times to which it had mainly been confined to the study of memory, his main contribution to experimental psychology.
Now we're going to talk about Ebbinghaus's major contribution to psychology and why it matters. Hermann Ebbinghaus is known as the founder of the experimental psychology of memory. The results of his research are counted today as a fundamental contribution to the field of psychology. Ebbinghaus's research on memory, forgetting curve, and learning curve can be considered as his most important discoveries. Ebbinghaus was able to show that higher mental processes could be studied using experimentation, which was against the perspective of the time. Therefore, he conducted experiments on himself to describe the processes of learning and forgetting, a general method of Ebbinghaus's research. The nonsense syllables will be invented, which is consisted of a consonant-vowel-consonant combination. Actual words in German in the list would be excluded. He needed something that could be easily memorized, which did not include cognitive associations. He would read each list consistently until he thought he had it memorized. Number of trials were required to be recorded to achieve a learning criterion of one complete errorless recitation. Aside from this general method enhanced, Ebbinghaus' approach to collect the first experimental data on human learning and memory. At the end of the research, Ebbinghaus made several findings that are still relevant and supported to this day. The forgetting curve and learning curve, constitutive components of modern learning techniques, rank as those significant discoveries. The forgetting curve. Ebbinghaus discovered the forgetting curve by analyzing of all his recorded data. He found that the forgetting curve is exponential, which means the first days the memory loss is more active, later the subject will still forget. However, the rate at the beginning will decrease. Then it clearly shows that the forgetting curve after learning or reviewing a piece of information becomes relatively high. The learning curve. The learning curve states a graphical representation of the rate where people make progress when receiving new information. Ebbinghaus's memory research proves that as he spent his time learning nonsensical words, his ability to remember things has been improved. The representation of the graph shows the relationship between how proficient someone is at a task and the amount of experience they have.
Now that we've talked about Ebbinghaus's contributions, we're going to talk about how relevant these contributions are today and in what context they are used. Ebbinghaus's contributions to the study of memory is still of currently occurring relevance to psychology today. Due to his research, we are now able to study memory that was once known as a concept of our conscious in an experimental way. We are able to empirically study memory by manipulating independent and dependent variables in addition to his introduction of the terms mean, variability, sources of measurement error, etc., which are all essential to research, statistics, and mathematics in current studies. If his contributions did not exist, the concept of the forgetting curve would be unknown of, and this is crucial as it determines the rate at which information is forgotten over time, if not retained, which emphasizes the importance of memory in everyday life. His contributions are used and referenced in many fields of study today. For example, it is used in almost every subject of education, where teachers emphasize the importance of studying for a longer period before an exam rather than trying to cram everything the night before. This is based on his theory of the forgetting curve, such that memory retention declines as time goes on. There have been a few changes made to his contributions, as his work was usually criticized for not having external validity. This is because most of his work was conducted in laboratory settings, whose results were hard to replicate in real life. These changes can be seen when it comes to increasing reliability and validity across his studies through replication so that his theories are applicable outside lab settings. But regardless of his limitations, there has been a great deal of research that has originated from his work and continues to heavily impact psychology in today's world. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We hope you gained some insight into the life of Hermann Ebbinghaus.